Yeah, so I'm going to create a new scene to work with. Before I do that, I'm just going to make some prefabs. Okay. So we've modified the player and camera object, or at least I have. I've added a little character here to the player, and I've changed some things about rigid body. We've also added our respawn script to the respawn point. So if we fall off, or if anything falls off, it'll respawn. So it's now more advanced than the one we had last week, the little pink bean. Let's save our new prefab. And the great prefabs, all we have to do is drag a fully formed game object with nested objects into our prefab folder. Yeah, you'll need to bring the player controller in from last week. Yeah. So if I just drag this over here, new original or variant from, I would say, an original prefab. And there I have player and camera, the new one. This means any new scene I create, I have my updated full version of that prefab. Well, you mean the player controller from last week? Yeah. So I actually have that in part 2 here, importing a custom package. It's this right here. So it's in the assignment for, or the task description from today. If anyone doesn't have the player controller or weren't here last week, they can get it from Moodle right here. From last week's player controller capsule. Okay, I think we're all back. Let's get that attendance while you're all still here. QR code, scanner, phone, pocket, take out. In 5. Okay, everyone has the attendance? Yeah. No? No? To focus. Yep. F. Focus. So yeah, if you want to focus on an object, just select it and then F, and you focus on it. You know what? Let's not make a new scene. That'll just all confusing. Setting up a ground again and all that. Let's just work with what we have. So So let's select our character, the player. So our player is here. We're going to add a new script to this player. Let's create a new script. You can right click, go to create, C# script. I'm going to call it jumping. G. And then just open it up. Okay, so we're gonna create a jump by adding force to the rigid body, adding a physics force. So the first thing I'm gonna do is create a variable to hold the value of the force, the strength. So I'm gonna create a number variable, let's say a float, and I will call it jump force. And as a default, let's just give it 10F, power of 10 floats. And we're applying force directly to the component rigid body. So this script will only work on an object that has a rigid body. And I'm going to create a rigid body reference as a variable here, private rigid body, RB, you're on the trolley. So that creates the variable of rigid body, and then our start method is going to assign this variable to the component rigid body. So ORB equals get component, angle brackets, rigid body. Semicolon. in Update, I'm going to create a key press. And as I like to do, I use bools. This bool I will call space, because I'm going to use the space bar equals input, not input, dot get key down, key code, dot space, up. And then we're constantly going to be checking if this key was pressed. So if space, bless you. Let's put a debug log in here. Bless you. So what we're going to do is add a force that is in the direction we want. This is, again, Unity documentation. I always want to refer back to that. This is our method. It is add force. It takes a vector 3 of force, vector 3 being position based, our X, Y, and Z location. But that can also take as a direction as well. We're adding on in a certain direction. Adding on in the Z direction, we add force in the Z, it'll go forward. Adding on in the Y direction, it'll go upwards. X direction, left and right. So our vector 3 force is going to take in 3 variables. We write vector 3's as taking in an X, Y, and Z. So 0, 0, 0 is 0 on the X, 0 on the Y, 0 on the Z. We want to add force in a particular direction. So if we wanted to add force on the X axis, we'd add a value here. 1, 0, 0 would add on the X value only. In our case, we want to add on the Y value because that's vertical. We want to jump vertically up. So we take a 0, 1, 0, meaning upwards, Y-axis. And then the second part of this is the force mode. There's different force modes. Impulse gives you a quick burst. Acceleration ramps up over time. In our case, we want impulse, like impulse power in Star Trek, like boom, this push. Yes, it is. So, force mode acceleration, force mode impulse, force mode velocity change are the 3. And then there's just force mode force, which is just like pushing someone, the force multiplied by the mass. For jumping, I find the best force mode is impulse. because it gives you an impulse. All the force is exerted at once. You don't have to like hold the button down and charge up your jump or anything like that. So back to the script. If we press space, we want to add force to our rigid body. We've assigned our rigid body as the variable ORB with this get component. Otherwise, we'd have to keep writing get component rigid body ORB anytime we want to affect it. In this case, we say ORB dot add force, and then it takes a vector. And it takes a force mode, which I said was going to be impulse. So new vector 3. Oh, I think I'll have to store this in a variable. But yeah, x, y, z, we want to affect the y only. And for that, yeah, we'd use our variable jump force. So then we have control over how big our jump is. There's a capital M there. Yeah, so no, I think we need to make a variable out of this. So, excuse me, I'm going to have to go back. I'm going to create a vector 3 that I'll name jump direction. And that's going to equal our new vector 3. Basically the same one I created down here. Vector 3, 0, jump force. And 0. And then down here, instead of putting that new, yeah, I'll store it here. Jump direction. Okay, we can save this and test this now. Save. Back in Unity. we can add this to the player, or we can add it to any object that has a rigid body. So in fact, yeah, I'll make a little cube first, make that dance first. Okay, ignoring the player for the moment, I'm just going to add a component here. So all I need to do is add this jumping script to anything with a rigid body, and it should jump when I press spacebar. Just drag it onto the box. Now I can press play. I press space and you see the box is jumping. Just to a cube, and the cube has a rigid body. All of these objects have rigid bodies as well. Now they all jump. Yep. Yep. Where is it? Oh, there. They're back. Yeah, the cube is just standard cube with a rigid body, and the respawn script is there, and the jumping script. And yeah, you've got your variable. You can increase or decrease the jump force as you see fit. If I say 1 as a value. If I say 20 as the value. Oh, I'm only affecting that one object. Yeah. But a script is still trying to access it. So, okay, so let's apply this script to our player. So on our player character, I'll just roll up all of these, roll up. See, I've got movement, respawn, on the player, I'm just going to add the jumping script. I can either drag it from over here or add component and search in scripts. And there is jumping. Add component, scripts. It's not a new script, we've already written it. Jumping. Now this little character should be able to walk around and jump. Now, I don't really like the floaty nature of that. I think you should fall a little bit faster. I'd probably increase the gravity scale. There's also, I don't know if you notice, huh? Yeah, it is. It's like a ghost. Also notice if we keep pressing space, we can jump in the air and fly around. We'll sort that out in a minute. Yeah, I prefer if you fall a little bit faster, so I generally increase my gravity. Gravity scale. You only have to use gravity or scale. So mass wouldn't do it. Okay. Okay. So, oh, it's only in 2D they give you the gravity scale. Okay, let's affect gravity. Rigid body, gravity scale. Sweetly. Yeah, that's the whole thing. He never comes down. Are you using gravity on your? Because if I select my character and I disable gravity, and now when I press play, he's going to go up, but he's not going to come down. Jump. And I go, bye. Bye forever. And there's no way of stopping. So just check that you are using gravity. Okay, so let's bring in our 3D assets. I am going to make a new scene for this. File, new scene. Basic built-in. I will save the changes. So new scene. I will save this scene as Tower 1. Let's get our standard assets in. A plane is always useful. Foreground. From my prefabs, I'll bring my updated player. Oh, and it doesn't have his jumping script on it, so I haven't updated the prefab to have that. Let's just add the jump. Okay. I need to remove the default camera because we have our own camera. I'm going to delete that camera. Then we can go ahead and bring in our Blender assets. Let me look at my Blender file. And I think it's probably a good idea if I just bring the tower in with the pieces together. So I'm going to do another FBX for that. I'm just going to select the wedges of the tower. And another FBX. With just these pieces selected. I don't have the cameras or any other bits, just this whole shape. FBX, tower, wedge, let's say 0, 1. You never know how many you're going to create. Just my selected objects. Tower, wedge 1. Back in Unity, I'll import these to my 3D models folder. Asset, import new asset. And I've got my two FBXs, tower wedge and wedge 1. Import, I don't see our materials. Oh, evil. Just import asset, asset, import asset. And I don't know if it's the same for you, but for me, I did not get my materials in here, even though wedge mat is there. But that's okay, we can fix that. I'm just going to bring them both in for the moment. Just basic colors. Okay, well then that's why it's always a good idea to export your actual image texture that you've created, your painted texture, which I have, wedge text. There it is, beautiful. Beautiful piece of art. So, all we need to do is put that on our diffuse color of a material in Unity. And it should work. So I'm just going to make a new material here in Unity. Create material. New wedge mat. And its base mat is looking for a texture. Let's bring in our wedge text. And yeah, you can use import asset, but I generally just drag and drop things to bring them in. Oh, and everything just jumped and worked the second I brought in wedge text. So I didn't actually need to make any more materials. Yeah, it just updated. I wasn't sure it was going to work, and I'd have to make materials. So that's good. It just didn't automatically bring in the PNG. But now that it's here, we have our details. And now we're ready to start jumping, right? Yeah. Uh-oh. Oh, no. Collision. 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 So colliders need to be set up for all of these surfaces. Let's go to our wedge. The wedge itself only needs a mesh collider. Add component. Yes, if a tower extra camera came in. So wedge collider or mesh collider for the wedge. You see, there it is. Looking pretty good. And then we just do the same for all the individual parts of the tower. I can do them all at once, I think, although there is a cylinder collider. There's a capsule collider I could use. No, let's just use mesh colliders for all of these, so I'm doing them all at the same time. All these objects, wedge, 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 wedge. And then I'm going to add the component, mesh collider. Add it to every individual object. You can't just add it to the tower wedge container object. It has to be each individual piece. Control A. Mesh collider, and you can just flick off the mesh renderer and see there's our collider. So the collision is working. You can flick the mesh renderer back on. No. Gravity affects the fall, but mass would not affect the fall of gravity. Everything falls at the same speed in gravity. Doesn't matter how big or small they are. I think. We're all teaching physics, yeah? He doesn't jump so high because of the force you're enacting, but he doesn't fall faster. We'd have to affect the actual gravity value, and we could do that globally, but I prefer to do it just on the character. Maybe making our own gravity value would be a better way to control it. Like, it's always a force putting out. Maybe we'll do it in later class. For now, let's just focus on jumping. So now I should be able to collide with these. Okay, I can just jump all the way up. Hey, and I can move my way around and down. So yeah, the jump height I'd want to affect. I don't want him to be able to jump all the way to the top in one jump. And also being able to jump in the air is an issue. So yeah. There he goes back. So yeah, this is what testing is all about. I'm trying to figure out what that jump height should be. So while I'm in play mode, I can start playing with the jump force. It's a bit too high, let's say 5. That's a dainty little jump. Not quite. So I can just about get up. Maybe 6.5. That seems like a fine height for a jump. But yeah, he should be falling faster. Okay, 6.5 works for me. Turn speed maybe should be higher. 120. 180. Yeah. And also we could be looking at the camera as well. It's damping. Well, a higher damping means it tracks with the player a bit faster. Lower damping, 0.1. You can basically move and it's going to take its sweet time to figure out where you are. I think about 5 is probably good. Yeah. So then all of these changes I've been making are going to disappear once I leave play mode. I just have to remember them. Yeah, jump force is back to 10. Let's put it to 6.5. We have a respawn point script, and we've no respawn point. We'll have to figure that out. Camera, damping, I'm going to say 5. Turn speed as well, yeah. 120? Yeah, thank you. All right, so final bit of scripting. Let's create a ground check. We want to check when the player is touching the ground and only be able to jump when they're touching that ground. So back to the jumping script. And I'm going to create a new function called ground check. Oh, you're inside of the prefab player in Canva. If you go back, scenes, there it is, opens up that as its own separate object. You can double click, then you can modify it in its own world, and then go back. So for ground check, we need a couple of variables. We need to check if the character is grounded. That's a true or false. Let's create a private bool is grounded. I'm going to set it to false by default. We need a float to check how far away from the ground we are. Ground distance, we'll say 1F. And we need a layer mask so we can mask out objects that aren't ground that we might be touching while in the air. So a layer mask. Three variables, and this is just the end of update here. It's outside of update. And then for the is grounded, this is a little bit obtuse, but we're basically going to check with a sphere. It's going to draw a check sphere around the player, depending on the ground distance and the ground layer. Physics.checkSphere. So first takes the value of where it's going to draw this sphere, this check sphere, like an overlap sphere. We'll say at transform position, which is transform position of the game object this script is on. Then I want to check the distance from the ground. And finally, our ground layer, which is a layer mask. And then the last thing to do is to call this script or call this function because we have created it, but we're not calling it. And we're basically going to be checking for it all the time. So we'll check in update. Basically call the script here. So yeah, it's going to relate to when we press the spacebar as well. So we want to do our ground check before. Let's say ground check, open and close parentheses, semicolon. And now when we press space, we're also going to be checking if the space bar was pressed and if the character was touching the ground. So is the character grounded? So if space and then and which means we're checking and we're not adding together, and is grounded. And then again with a check, we do the doubles. Is equal to, equals, true. You press the jump button and you are touching the ground. Rid of some extra lines we don't need. So a couple of places we use the variable since it was declared. We create it as the false. Then we apply it in the ground check. The bool is true or false depending on the result of this ground checking sphere. And then we're asking, is it true? If it is, then we can jump. Ground distance, we're only using in the check sphere. It basically tells us what the size of the sphere at our feet is going to be, or around us. And then ground layer will require a slight little bit more setup in Unity. We haven't defined any objects as being on a particular ground layer. Okay, let's save this and jump back into Unity. Good. So yeah, if I press play now, I should not be able to jump without the condition being true. Yep, nothing happening. If I check my console, nothing coming up. So on our player, I'll leave jump mode. You see we have a ground layer and it says nothing. Nothing selected. It can be everything. It can be default. We could try with everything and see if it gives us what we want. But I want to show you how to create a custom one as well. Hey, I can jump. Oh, but it lets me jump completely in the air forever. Quadruple. Yeah, but that's what we had before. So we don't want that. We want it to be able to stop. However, our script is definitely working. You can see our debug. You press to jump and you're touching the ground. So everything's obviously everything. Default still isn't giving us what we want. So what we need to do is create our own layer that we can separate things out on, and we want the ground, basically, and our wedges. So I'll just select the ground first, makes sense, ground check, ground everything. And up here we have our layer. It is on the layer default. Let's add a layer. You got it. There's a whole bunch of layers. We can use our own user layer. I'll use user layer 6, ground. And then, once I've created that user layer, ground, which if you just missed what I was doing, you just go to layer here, default, and add a new one. But now you can see mine is here, ground, number 6. I'm going to apply that to every object I want him to be able to jump on. So all of the ground, the wedges as well. And just like the mesh collider, I'm selecting them all individually. Layer mask ground. And then finally we tell the player, this is the mask you're looking for. Player. Ground layer is ground. Now I cannot jump. Maybe I need my ground distance to be up. Let's say 2. There we go. And I can only jump once. I cannot keep jumping in the air. Maybe 1.1. 1.2. Okay, so my ideal ground distance is 1.2. On my ground layer, this is on the player, by the way. This is set to ground. Oh, yes, yes, yes. You need to, in the rigid body, freeze rotation on the Y of the player. Constraints, freeze that rotation. Yeah. Yeah, mine is not jumping. He needs to have a ground distance of 1.2. Follow command script goes on the camera, and then the target is the player. Thank you. Thank you, class. Oh, gone. By the time I sit down. Oh.